Okay, hello everyone. My name is Abina Beloved Green, and I am here with Chris Benjamin, author, editor, and content manager at Atlantic Publishers Marketing Association. Chris has kindly agreed to sit with me for a few minutes to talk about his position at APMA and what it's all about in terms of the book publishing and marketing field. And we'll get to learn a little bit about Chris as the person and the author as well. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to have a few intro questions before we get into the meat of it. So Chris, can you tell me what you prefer, apple juice or apple cider?
Oh, Lord, I'd have to say apple juice.
Oh, I don't know why I assumed you were a cider. Okay.
Not big on the fermentedness of fruit.
So you don't like things like kombucha either? Like
No, I don't.
fermented things in general. Okay.
Yeah, not really.
Okay. What about kenke?
Kenke. Oh yeah, foods is different. Yeah, kenke.
Oh,
Yeah, all those. Yeah, I liked kenke right away more than fufu.
really? But you don't like
which
apple?
most people it's the opposite. But yeah, I was like, oh, this is good. Yeah, it's something
Oh,
with the fruit. Yeah.
that's interesting. So kenke is a fermented, what is kenke? It's a ball of fermented cornstarch, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what's in it. But yes, it tastes very different from fufu, which is cassava. Um,
And
and
plantain.
yeah, and plantain. And it's totally different flavor, but
It's
totally different experience, but the similar texture, I guess.
so like our three main balls are kenke, banku, and fufu.
Right. Yeah. I like them all, but kenke was the one I warmed to right away. Like
That's
thought it was great.
interesting for somebody who doesn't like fermented drinks. See, you learn new things about people.
Yeah, can't
Okay.
explain it.
Yeah. For context, Chris has spent several months in Ghana a number of years ago. So those are some of our staple foods. So that's why I asked him, because kenke has a very strong flavor.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting contrast there. All right, so apple juice, you prefer apple juice. Okay, and chocolate covered raisins or almonds?
Almonds.
Okay.
Don't really like raisins in general.
Yeah, raisins are kind of like in the olive camp where people are like,
Yeah, love olives.
you do?
Raisins, no.
Okay, good to know for when I
It's
bring
just
you
ruined grapes is all it is.
ruined.
Spoiled grapes.
They have their place. They have their place, but almonds, I'll gift you almonds and not raisins. Okay. So now let's go into the storytelling. Can you think of a childhood story that comes to mind that impacted you?
I'm gonna say in junior high, I read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series by Douglas Adams. And I just these are sci-fi, but really more humor and observation about life on Earth. They're really satire more than anything, and very English in a way, but very dry and observational and very smart. And I'd say almost anthropological in their kind of observations. But and they became TV series and radio shows. Like they're written before my time, but my brother was into them. And I was probably a little young to be reading them. And I remember just cracking up during reading period in junior high school. And my friends asked me what was so funny. And I read a little bit. There was a bad word in it. And they were like, oh. It was just, I don't know what it like. I think it definitely shaped a lot of my way I see the world as an absurd play. And just as though there's a lot of nastiness and terrible things in the world. I think it sort of allowed me to see it. And I mean, it's a bit of a privilege because I have a good life and a good situation, but I'm not suffering myself at the moment. I wasn't then, but it was a way to see all that pain and find humor in it. And I think it's important when you do experience pain yourself to find humor in that, and to be able to make fun of yourself and people in general. And specific people, but just humans as a species, because we are hilariously smart and stupid at the same time. And that was the first time I experienced that in literature and realized that was
Mm,
possible to tell a story that,
mm,
and to tell a
interesting.
story and not really mean it.
And
You
not
know,
really,
like all
okay.
the writing was so earnest that I had been exposed to up to that point, and to tell a story in a way that's just silly, but at the same time, it makes a serious point as well. So I love that. And Douglas Adams unfortunately died fairly young, but everything he wrote was really smart and funny,
Mm,
and humane, funny and not in a mean way. So I really appreciate that about his work.
smart, funny, and humane.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay. I feel like I've heard of that title, but I don't know from where. It's not something I've ever read or experienced. So that makes it a little bit more real to me. Like if I ever see it, I would look at
Yeah, there was an American movie made a few years ago
it. Okay.
that was pretty decent. I enjoyed it. I think it got mixed reviews, but I liked it. As a fan of the book, of course, it doesn't quite live up to the book. It doesn't have the same detail, but it was a good, just on its own, without considering the book. It was funny and enjoyable, and it gives you a sense of what that style of humor. So,
Okay.
you might
So
have heard of it from that.
maybe it's from the movie then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look for it.
The
Um,
only actor I remember from it was Most Def.
Most Def was in it. Okay.
Yeah,
Definitely looking
and
for
he
it.
was good. He's a good actor. I like his acting. So
Is that why I've heard of it?
maybe.
I don't know, but I'll look for it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes me wonder at that. So this was in junior high, and you noticed these things about it in that as you were reading it. By the
Yeah, I don't know if I would have articulated it that way at that
Okay.
age, but I think that's what got me, and sort of I just thought it was hilarious. But yeah, it was sort of like, it's the kind of humor that makes you go, "Oh, it's so true! It's so
Mhm.
true! We
Okay.
are like that." That it's just, um, like the book opens with, I think the main character is Arthur Dent, and he's lying down in front of his house trying to prevent a bulldozer from bulldozing his house, because the government wants to put an interstate through
Mhm.
his, like a highway through his where his house is. And then his friend comes and says, "We got to get out of here. The earth is about to blow up. This alien race is building a superhighway through where the earth is. I'm actually an alien. You didn't know that, but we got to get out off the planet. It's going to blow up." And it
Your friend?
does. And that's how it all starts. And it's just like, if on one hand, Arthur Dent's problem was serious, on the other hand, it puts it in perspective. And if there were intergalactic races interacting, we would have all the same stupidness on a larger scale, probably, unlike
In a
Star
way, we
Trek.
kind of, yeah, we're
Yeah.
observing certain things right now. Um, yeah, I'm gonna look for it. Did you feel at that time, were you at that time a writer already, like internally? Like, did you express yourself in written word, or did that spark something for you?
Um, I did already, like from a young age. I mean, the first story that really got me, I think, was called Danny and the Dinosaur. And I was probably 6, and it's like a dinosaur comes along and meets this little boy. I don't remember where the dinosaur comes from, but they ride around town and have adventures together. And I basically copied it and
Mhm.
like traced the pictures and rewrote it, and like showed it to people and said I wrote it. And they're like, "Oh, you're so clever," and I
Those were the
loved it.
beginnings of Chris Benjamin, the author.
Yes, yes, theft, theft of others' work. Um, but I don't know. I guess I was really captured by it. I loved the pictures, and but I did create, like I wrote a story in grade 6 called "The Monster That Wanted to Eat New York," which should have been "The Monster Who Wanted to Eat New York," looking back. But it was, it was, that was in grade 6, and it was like my teacher was blown away by the writing, and I
Mm.
think getting that positive feedback as well. But I also read it aloud, and my classmates were in hysterics. They laughed at all the right places. And I was a shy kid, as so many
Mm.
writers probably will say, but
Mhm.
like, to get that attention and a positive attention, and yeah, I was hooked. And I think I read a lot, so I did want to be a writer, and I did kind of have it in me. And I think in junior high, like I wrote a novel as a project, like it was an assigned project. You could write a novel or an anthology or whatever, and I did a novel. You know, it was like 60 pages or something, which is a lot of writing
That's
for that
still a lot
age.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really good. Like I read it to my kids, and they loved it.
Nice.
So, and I sometimes think I should redo it and see if it would be publishable as a children's story. But and I got 101 from the teacher. So
Ooh.
again, real positive. I won a prize and all this stuff. And so just getting all that positive feedback, you know, it's like good for the ego, I guess, at a young age, and nice to realize I was good at something. So I had it in me to want to do it, but I got away from it because at some point I realized, you know, I guess I saw that you didn't really make money from books. Even at that age, I realized it was very unlikely to make a living at it. And I decided to go to business school because that would get me a job. And I really wanted to like get a job and make good money and be comfortable, which is, looking back, I feel like it's really weird goals for a kid to have. But I think, and we were a middle class family, but we were just on the edge enough that I saw the stress on my parents making a go at it, and how hard they worked and how it wasn't always secure. And I wanted to be more comfortable than that. Like it was, I guess, a little bit scary enough for me,
Okay.
you know, to see, like, my mom was always worried about money, always worried about money. And I don't mean like luxuries. I mean, just like, I don't know, can we afford that and stuff? And it's like, it's not like we were considering luxury cruises or anything. So
Right.
she was worried enough that I was like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to make really good money. I remember I had a figure, $40,000, which seemed like really rich to me at that. Like, I don't know where I got that number, but if
Solid
I make
number.
that, I'll be set. And it was like, it's a good salary. And this is in the 90s, you know, it was a good salary. But so I went to business school, and I tried to work a normal job, and I was not really happy.
What normal job did you have? Like one of them?
I was a market researcher. It wasn't a bad job. It was for a firm called the Canadian Innovation Center. I think they're a nonprofit, actually. They're associated with the University of Waterloo.
Okay.
And we did helped people with mostly inventors with new product ideas or inventions to see if there was a market for their idea. And so I would do research into the market for their idea. And if they got a good review, it helped them go get a bank loan.
Okay.
So it was kind of, and I did a different product every week almost. And I think I got a promotion at one point. I got onto bigger projects and stuff. So it was somewhat intellectually interesting, but I kind of reached a point. I was like, I'm just helping people put more stuff into the consumerist world, and collectively it's destroying the world. You know, like all this stuff is really at the root of all our environmental crises, and most of it is not needed. And so, although I appreciate, like, these were people with dreams of similar to me, they're like, I'm gonna be rich and I won't have any more problems with if this thing takes off. But I was like, it's misguided. It's misguided, and I need to find a purpose in life. And so I ended up going back to school, and I took environmental studies. But everything I did a marketing degree, I did environmental studies, and I always tagged on communications. So in marketing, I was like, I want to do marketing communications. So everything was focused. It was like advertising, promotion, PR, everything I could get on that. In environmental studies, everything was like, how can people who want to do environmental work share the story, so that everybody cares as much as I do about the
Okay.
environment. How do I studied this guy, Weeb, I think was the last name. But he had a saying. He was theorist in the 50s, and he wrote, "How can we sell brotherhood like we sell soap?"
I
And
like
so
that.
this is like a product. We sell the concept of brotherhood, sisterhood, humanity coming together, and working together to make a better world. So that was kind of what my focus was in grad school. Um, and yeah, it wasn't until I went to Ghana that I got back to writing, because I
Mm,
connected with, I happened to make a connection through a guy in Finland, a Ghanaian guy in Finland who worked at Nokia, but he ran Ghana Web. I don't know if you've seen that website,
oh
but it
yeah,
has,
yeah.
yeah, it has all
Oh,
the stories of the day.
you used to
And
work
so
for Ghana Web?
what's that? No,
Like
no,
what
but
okay.
no, I didn't work directly for them, but I met him in Finland, the guy, I forget his name now, who runs it. But he knew all the editors of all the newspapers, and there were a lot of them at that time, probably still are, in Ghana, because it hadn't been long since the dictatorship of Jerry Rawlins, and so they were like newly free country in a way, and just new press springing up everywhere. So there were like dozens of newspapers in Accra, and he sent my resume around, and one of them at the Statesman agreed to meet with me, and we hit it off pretty good, and he hired me, and he liked my writing, because I was always doing writing as part of my job, but just not the main part. So I showed him samples of that and some freelance work I'd done, and he was like, yeah, you know what you're going to do? You're going to travel around and write stories about new government programs, and just to assess what kind of impact they're having on people, whether good or bad.
Okay.
And he was pro-government. It was a conservative government. He was a conservative guy, but he was like, whatever, you can write what you want. You know, you'll be our lefty, on our token lefty, token Canadian,
Right.
whatever. But it was great, because I got to be like the idiot abroad who knew nothing about this place, and just kind of went and asked a lot of questions and said, tell me, teach me, teach me, teach me. And
Mhm.
people were really happy to talk about what was going on in their lives and what their issues were, and know it would be in the newspaper and people would learn. And so I wrote about all kinds of things, and I learned so much about the country, and I just fell in love with that, the writing and the talking to people.
Okay.
And yeah, and so that's what drew me back to that path. And when I got back to Halifax, my wife and I decided, like, we were having a great time there, but we wanted to have kids, and we wanted to be in a position to kind of see the benefits of our work, um, to see things grow over time. And we knew we wouldn't be in Ghana long term. So
How long
um,
had you been there? How long did you spend there?
we were there 6 months.
Okay, so
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So we came back to my home, Nova Scotia. My wife is from, well, various places, but I met her family, her Canadian family's in Ontario, and she has lots of family in Finland as well. Um, and so she agreed to give Nova Scotia a shot, and ended up getting really good work here, which allowed me to take the risk of going freelance. And that's kind of how it all started. It's just putting myself out there as a freelance writer.
Okay, that's so interesting because I mentioned to you, I don't know if you remember, but I remember when I was starting to try freelance, I would see your name a lot, like, because I would read the front pages of the magazines, like, who's behind this? And I would see Chris Benjamin.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I would see. So we just met, but I've seen your name over the years and just have taken note, like, okay, he's around. So
Yeah.
it's cool to
Oh,
see that
that's
that's
nice.
what you're doing.
Yeah, that's nice. I freelance less now with the APMA work, but still some.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was a while where that's all I did. So it was quite a lot. I was producing a lot of work, I guess.
Yeah, you think you were? I think you were because your name stands out to me. There's maybe a couple others, but like I just remember like, yeah, seeing your name a lot in the front of the magazines. It's like, oh, this guy's a pro. Okay, so interesting. And so wait, Ghana, how did you get there though? Like you met this guy online, like you were just chatting, and you were like, I want to come to Ghana.
So Ghana came about because Mia, my wife, was in grad school in Toronto at University of Toronto, doing social work, and she had Ghanaian friends there.
Okay. In Toronto?
And yes,
Okay.
yeah, who were doing their degree there. Um, and of course they hyped it to no end. It was like, oh, you want to travel? Because we knew we wanted to travel after her grad school.
Okay.
And they're like, you got to come to Ghana. It's English. It's safe. It's the safest place in the region. It's a wonderful place. We're known for our hospitality. So they were very welcoming. And this one guy in particular, David, really wanted us to come. And he said, oh, I'll hook you up. I'll get you jobs. And he was going to be there in late 2006 anyway. And then he ended up going earlier. His mother died. And so he went back for her funeral and took us to his village.
Oh,
yeah. So he did help us meet a lot of people and get us kind of on the ground running there, and helped us find accommodation and with people he knew. So he was a huge help. And yeah, just having that in the Finland job connection for me was total luck. I was just doing research and preparation, and I was like, oh, this guy lives in Finland, like hour from where we were living at the time. So he agreed to meet with me, and he was very generous with his time and helping me out that way. So
interesting.
it all kind of came together.
You also spent time in Indonesia.
Yes, I was during my grad school.
Okay.
So I got a scholarship to go there and do my research, and that was on communication between environmental groups, or how people who have concerns or stakeholders, I guess you could say, with the natural resource use in the country, how they can better share information to work together for conservation purposes. So like everyone from activists like Greenpeace, Boy Scouts, who are very active environmental activists in Indonesia, and then the national oil company, and farmers, fishers, and their communities and families. So a wide range of people with very different interests, but of same resources that they're concerned with. So if there was a way they could better share information and work together.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, that's, as a grad student, it was not unlike what I did in Ghana, which I'm just an idiot who knows nothing about the place. Bunch of theoretical knowledge in my head from school, but nothing real. And then talking to people who actually live this stuff day in, day out, and are of the place. And yeah, just traveling around and hearing their stories and sharing their stories. And at the end, we had what we called a roundtable session, where we brought 30 different people from different groups together, had lunch together, and everybody talked. We just did around the circle, and a lot of connections were made. And like the local public TV station was sort of like, oh, well, to the Greenpeace and the Boy Scouts, and also to the scientists who were doing research, oh, we'll broadcast some, we always need more content, we'll broadcast some of your information. And then because the farmers and fishers watch that stuff all the time in the evenings to find out more information, because it's all educational programming. So we made these kind of connections that had never been made before. And but again, it was such a privilege to be allowed to do that research. And
wow,
yeah,
that's big work. And I can see like the threads coming together of like listening, talking to people, storytelling. So now how does that bring you to APMA?
I mean, at the start, there was a very practical thing, which is just when you're freelancing, you have periods where you are very busy, and then there's dry spells, and which can be challenging. And it's always nice just to have a base of steady work, predictable income. And so as a freelancer, I was always like, every now and then there'd be a job, and I'm just like, I'm just going to apply to this and see what happens. And sometimes you'd go through it and the interview process, you're like, half you really wants it and half you says, God, I hope I don't get this because I don't want a real job. But I
I'm
want
gonna
to
be
keep,
locked down to this.
yeah. um, but the APMA worked out great because I interviewed for a really full-time job, being half the editor and half doing magazine distribution work. So arranging like drops and having magazines and newspapers and go into coffee shops and stuff, which I had no experience, no ability at, which is probably why I did not get the job. But they liked my background in writing, the fact that I was a published author, and the fact that I clearly had editing skills and copywriting skills. But they instead of hiring me, they hired me on for a new thing. They created a new position for me, something they'd been wanting to do, which was they called digital editor. So I was responsible for online content. It was 10 hours a week. I was like, oh, perfect. So I did that for a few months, but then the person that they did hire left the position. And I think they realized it had always been a challenge with this position to have someone doing those two very different things, editing a magazine and distributing a magazine. It's two very different skill sets. It's hard to find someone with both those skill sets. So they split it into two jobs, and they asked me if I wanted to do the managing editor side, and they hired someone else to do the distribution side. So then I ended up 20 hours a week, which is more than I had wanted, really, but it was too good to resist. It was too interesting a job, and to edit a magazine and put out a magazine a few times a year about books just seemed like a dream opportunity to me. So I took it, and no regrets. It's
No
been
regrets.
a wonderful thing, and it's evolved over time and been different things, but it's steady 20 hours a week in terms of that practical side of it.
Okay.
And I enjoy it, and it is a really nice mix. It gives me the other 20 to work on either freelance work or books.
Right.
You know, I'm like right now I'm writing a new book, so it's allowed me quite a bit of time for that.
I love it. That sounds perfect to me. That sounds like a dream job to me too. So let's get more into that, because yeah, I want to do the same thing. And I'm sure other people watching are interested in that too. So what you brought, so they wanted you had editorial skills already. You obviously had done lots of interviewing, communications, worked for media companies like websites. You said copywriting skills. So
yeah,
can you bullet what skills you brought in that they were like chose you, and then what skills you learned?
I think a big thing was I was really connected as an author. I mean, I'm trying to think where I was when they hired me. I had 3 books already published, and both in fiction and nonfiction. So, and when you publish a book, obviously you meet a lot of other writers because you go to events together and you do things. And I had a strong social media presence, which I think allowed me to make a lot of other connections.
Okay.
Really, I think one of my biggest skills has always been as a connector. I think somebody wrote a business book, maybe it was Malcolm Gladwell, I don't know, one of these theorists of business type things. And there was like, I remember there were these hot buzz terms at the times, like the maven and the connector and a few others, but I'm the connector. I'm the person who, and it's not like I'm the most social person or anything. It's just, I take note of people when I meet them, and I try to stay a little bit in touch, even if it's just connect on LinkedIn or whatever, just so I have them there. And if they need me, I'm there. And if I need them, they're there and I can call on them. And I can also help other people, like when someone comes to me looking for people with abilities in different areas, I usually have a pretty good knowledge of who they can go to or who they can find. And particularly in the literary realm, in Atlantic Canada. and that has grown a lot in this role, but it was there already, and I think that really drew them. Yeah, the technical copy editing skills, I think they did a test for me that I had to copy edit a document, but I've always just been, I think I was raised, I mean, my grandmother was so meticulous and grammatically perfect, and she drove that into her kids, and her son, my father, drove that into me.
Okay.
And it's funny, I don't drive it into my kids because I want to give them a break. I gotta remember how it was so drilled into me as a kid. But my brother and I are both like that. And I think I have a good mind for that kind of stuff, but it was also learned
Okay.
very, very carefully. So that's and it's for those watching who are interested in that, I mean, definitely familiarize with yourself with style guides, particularly the CP style guide in Canada. But just know your grammar, and it's just work, it's something you study and learn, and you know how a sentence works,
Right.
and know, because we all follow in the same language, the same set of rules. We may not know it. It's in our subconscious. We may not think about it, but it's there, and it helps to understand why it works that way and what the rules are, so that you can make sure when writers submit you sentences and paragraphs in a story that you understand the flow of those things, and when they're communicating what they mean to be communicating and when they're failing to. And then I had a great English prof at Dow who he actually did talk. I just remembered this, but yeah, he talked a lot about editing our own work when we write an essay. He said, I want you to make every sentence perfect and work, and then go back and make every paragraph perfect. Make sure, and then go back and make sure the whole thing is
Wow.
perfect. That it, as a unit, it makes sense, and as beginning, middle, end stuff. But you start with the basic unit of thought communication, which is the sentence.
Right. The building block. Yeah, you have to be able to write a good sentence, or I keep fiddling with the light. You have to be able to write a good sentence. This is where it starts from. So
Yeah.
copy editing skills, and you just went into that, like the building of, like, can you make a good sentence structurally, and then does it make sense in terms of the idea? Being a connector, being a published author and a connector, the relation with those. Okay, so those are some things that you came in with. And what now did your day, those 20 hours look like? What does your job look like? You get to work, what are you doing?
It varies from, it's very seasonal in a way.
Okay.
We're now, when I started, we had 3 issues a year of the magazine. We're down to 2 issues per year. So there's a spring and a fall issue of the magazine. And that's where my focus, a lot of my focus is right now, is I've I've assigned all the stories for the spring issue that's coming up in May, and assigned those. So those are starting to trickle in, but writers have until mid-March to submit them. And then I'm tracking down artwork. So that's another part of my job, is myself and our marketing director and our designer kind of work together to make the look of each issue. And we have kind of a standard look, but then also each issue is its own thing. So we have to find appropriate artwork to accompany each story, whether that's pictures of the writer or the books, or pictures from the book, or just something that makes you feel or think what you're supposed to be feeling or thinking when you read the article. So tracking down a lot of art, tracking down a lot of logistical stuff, finding books from the publishers, contacting publishers to send out review copies to writers of reviews or essays that are going into it. So there's the whole logistical side.
A lot behind it.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
writing.
and that's just the magazine.
Yeah.
I'm also working on currently a campaign called Voices, which we started to profile authors and put more of a spotlight on authors particularly from groups that have been historically, I could say, neglected or unfairly treated, their voices suppressed at times. So our first one was Black Voices, where we had Black Atlantic Canadian authors featured. Our second one was Indigenous Voices, so mostly Mi'kmaq authors, but some of our local publishers might publish Indigenous writers from other parts of the country. So we had an Anishinaabe artist, for example, included. And now we're doing the LGBTQIA2S plus community coming up in the spring. So these are interviews with the authors by video, similar to what we're doing here, but then we boost them and we promote them a lot and make it part of a broader campaign. And we work with partners on that to try to extend the reach. So that's a lot. Right now, we've got a call out for an interviewer facilitator to work with me on that. Yeah, we're really excited about this one, and those videos will start coming out probably in March.
Nice. And that's on the Atlantic Books YouTube channel, or
we'll find we have put them on our YouTube, and we usually premiere them on Facebook.
Okay.
Because that's where our biggest audience is, and we boost them so they reach new people as well.
Okay.
We do a paid promotion on Facebook for them. So yeah, they've reached. I mean, we've got some of them in the tens of thousands of viewers on them. Wow. So we've been really pleased to reach a lot of new people with some of the folks we've interviewed them. A lot of them are well-known authors already, but some are not, and are just starting out or aren't as well known. So it's a chance to really put the spotlight on them and feature those important voices. And they have perspectives that I don't have myself, and people like me don't have. So it's about diversity as well, obviously, and just championing, because we have a rich diversity of writers in this region. We have an incredibly diverse, and it's not your grandpa's generation of writers. It's much more diverse than it ever was in the past. So we want to celebrate that and amplify that. So
I love it. So that's the Voices campaign. You can look for it on the atlanticbooks.ca website, and also on Facebook. Chris is saying Facebook, Atlantic Books Today. What's the Facebook page?
Yeah, Atlantic Book Today.
Atlantic Books Today Facebook page. So you can see, I was listening to some earlier actually before this interview. So really good stuff. So yeah, look for that. And okay, so you just talked about what a day in the life looks like, I guess, as in APMA. So you're editing the magazine, you're getting writers, so you're putting out a call for submissions. They come in, you have to arrange it physically, make sure all this works, and then you edit it as well.
Yeah, I edit it, and I work with Gwen, who's our designer, and she does the design and layout and look of it, but I sort of track down all the artwork and try to give her options she can choose from whenever I can. I remember last issue she was kind of jesting that, oh, you've given me so many beautiful images, and now I'm not allowed to use them all, and I can't fit them all in, and there's all this writing too. So it's sometimes we end up with the embarrassment of riches, which is a good thing. But yeah, and that's something that was not a skill I'd say I came in with, and I wouldn't say I'm a super visual person, but I've really I think I've developed a lot in that. And it's important to have an eye for what will work. But really, it's Gwen.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Do you have the latest one there? Do you have the latest one in there? I had it. I carried it around somewhere, but it is beautiful.
Oh, I don't have the latest.
Or just any of them?
I have.
I think mine's downstairs.
This one won the Atlantic Journal Association Gold Medal issues for New Voices, Better World. This was fall. This was last spring, so a year ago, and it was a look at Atlantic books in the world. This is actually a former student of Gwen, our designers, who's in Japan with her copy of Anne of Green Gables. So we wanted to kind of show a little bit of how Atlantic books have had a global impact, but also the globe has had an impact on our literature and what we write. And,
I love it.
so a good image to do that with.
Yeah, I love it. Go ahead.
So the cover image is a big part of my job because we really want to, the cover is so important. It's a free publication. It comes in the paper or however people come it. And the important thing is to get their attention and make sure they don't just chuck it, that they open the thing and find out more about it. So the cover is really important. So we put a lot of effort. We've won, I think 3, maybe 4 Atlantic Journalism Awards for our covers. So we're really proud about that. It's a team effort, it's me and Alex and Gwen, and actually the whole team has input on it, and we work together on it. So it's really important.
I love that, especially like when you were describing it to me before, just like how much work goes into selecting the cover and the artist and featuring it. So when people, like when you see magazines, like so much goes into them. It's not just, I don't know, sometimes we don't think of what's behind it, and that's why I'm doing this, is to say like what's behind it and who's behind it. But the art is amazing, and it is slightly different, like a different take every time, as Chris just showed. So if you see this magazine, consider yourself lucky that you get this artwork, and also the contents inside is very well done, very rich, as Chris is saying, authors and individuals in our region. So pick up a copy, devour it, enjoy it. Lots of good stuff in there. And you kind of answered one of the questions that I was going to ask, is that I asked you what you came in with, and you talked about what you gained while being there, which is an eye for like the design, the visuals, because I don't think that's our thing. Like I'm not that good with that either. Is there anything else that you've picked up while being there?
I think I've learned a lot about how I guess I mean there's I don't know how to describe it obviously exactly, but there's sort of an art to talking about books in a publication. And I've coming in, I read literary journals, and I read a book coverage in newspapers and New York Review of Books, and also local newspapers, and Globe and Mail has done usually a pretty good job of covering books in interesting ways. But I had never put much thought into how that is done and how to do that conversation beyond reviews. So I think I've learned a lot more about being creative in telling stories about books.
Okay.
And the magazine is a real art of sort of, I mean, to be real, there's a sell here. We want people to read this and buy the books, or at least, or get them from the library, but try them out, pick them up, look at them, read the things. That's the main goal, is to get people reading these books. But it's not just a catalog. We have catalogs. We've used catalogs. Catalogs are fine, but they're a different thing.
Right.
So this is about kind of getting the conversation going, and their ideas about books, their stories about books, their thoughts about books. So that's a really important part of what I do. And I think it's something I've developed and gotten better at over time, is thinking about how we tell these stories about books. And related to that is how I work with freelance writers and how I kind of explain their work to them. And I think that's something I've had to develop, because, I thought at the beginning, you just give a word count and a deadline and they handle the rest, right? Which is what most editors have given me, if that at times. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth just to get a deadline and a word count once they confirm to it. But I realized, like, it's a bit of garbage in, garbage out thing if you don't give proper clarity on what you want written. And I don't want absolute control. I don't want to dictate the story. They assess the books in their own ways, but to have them writing about it in a way that fits what we do, you know, and I really try to get writers to use first person and talk about their own personal journey with the book,
Okay.
because that's a lot more interesting. Like, and I'd always get stuff submitted that was readers will find, readers will appreciate, and it's like, but it's not really, you don't know that. And it's not for us to say what other readers will experience with this book. It's for us to talk about our own, as writers, experiences with these books.
That's an important like thing that you're touching on, because that's what we being me like think you're supposed to say. So it's
Right.
kind of freeing to realize that you can just say what you think about a book. Like,
Yeah, and I think other people may feel differently, but I think that's a much more interesting read for the readers than being told this is how this book is, like in some authoritative way. And I think you can come up with a lot of insights and interesting things to say about the book, just by offering your own personal experiences with it. And to me, that's a lot more like if you review a book, Abena, for us, I want to know what Abina's journey with that book, and the story is as much about Abina as the book.
mm,
It makes it a lot more interesting.
yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but it does make it more of a relationship or like a
Yeah,
pull because you believe that person.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and nothing is more convincing than a personal recommendation of
Right.
a book. Like
That's
when a
what
friend
you like.
tells you, you would
Yeah.
like this.
Like I'm gonna look up that Galaxy. What was it? Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah,
Because you made it seem like something that I would care about. You know, out of all the things that could have my attention, now I'll be like, oh, okay, I might check that out. Okay, so my last question, I mean, there's others, but I'm gonna wrap it up. Is so Chris, you are the author of several books, and I have one in front of me here, which is your latest, Boy with a Problem. This is short stories. So I checked marked the beginning, like if I read one and then when I finished it. So I think I got all of them, a couple things underlined. This is short stories. And I want to ask you about two things about this. So briefly, do you have a launch for this coming up?
no.
Okay.
I mean, it came out in 2020. Everything was shut down, so we didn't. And I keep thinking I should go back to it and launch it, but part of me thinks it almost feels
We've moved
too
on.
late. But perhaps, yeah, I mean, that's, as a writer, I think we do that. Like you write a thing and you want to move on to the next thing. But I should really think more about readers and what they would want. And it is still a fairly new book, so I should. I will say though, for those watching, there is video of me reading from it on YouTube and on our I think AtlantaBooks.ca made.
Yeah, there's a couple excerpts of you. So people can check that out, which is almost as good. So Boy with a Problem, short stories, really and lots of different takes and different angles and different characters. So I kind of guess I'll pull it around and say, do you feel like you were, as you talked about that Hitchhiker's Guide book and movie, do you feel like you brought some of that into the stories here in terms of humanity, but humor, irreverent, do you feel like some of that has shown up in your writing and in here in these stories?
Yeah, I think I always I write with a bit of an acerbic pen, a bit of tongue-in-cheekness, and I'm very observant, I think, of the not hypocrisy, but contradictions that we all have, and it is, and we think I talk to my writing students as well, but it's like notice the difference between what you're character says they believe and what they really believe, or what they think they believe and what they really believe. So that's something I'm trying to, in subtle ways, draw out. And I think there's a lot of humor in that. And I know as a human being, I like, my kids make fun of me when I so obviously contradict myself when I'm lecturing them about something, like, oh yeah, like you never watch too much TV, you know. Like, you never scroll through everything about a Raptors game after having just watched the Raptors game, do you? No. So like they their kids are so astute to that stuff, like when you contradict yourself. So, and there's great hilarity there, and I think there are bits of humor, and something a lot of people have commented about how funny that book is, and I didn't, like, I'm not trying to be funny. It's pretty serious material, really. A lot of the people are dealing with real issues, but I always try to find the humor in it, and I'm not trying to make fun of anybody who's struggling. Obviously, it's just that life is absurd, and we need to be able to laugh at it.
We do. And I agree with you. Like, I did find myself laughing at stuff and underlining things in very serious stories or scenes. And I think it's like what you said, it's because we're being shown a mirror of us, like of humans and our contradictions. And you're like, oh my, like you roll your eyes like, oh my gosh, we do that, right? So yeah. We're going to end on this with a problem, and I'm going to let you have the final word or space if there's anything else you want to share about what you have coming up, or personally, or what APMA has coming up that you want people to check out.
Oh, I'll just say watch for the May issue. It's our 30th anniversary issue of Atlanta Books Today. We've been doing this 30 years. It's incredible.
30 years.
Stephen Kimber is writing a big story about that. He's a revered, amazing, talented Halifax journalist who's won more Atlanta Journalism Awards probably than anyone ever, as far as I know. He wins every year. So I'm really excited that he's able to do that, and he's going to interview a couple past editors of the magazine and kind of tell the genesis story and look at some of the big books over the years. We've got amazing cover art coming up for that, and it's part of a retrospective of the Sobe Art Prize. It's actually their 20th anniversary. Goose Lane Editions, one of our members publishers, is publishing a book on a 20-year retrospect of that art award. We've got it's going to be a really great issue. And the other one is Voices. Watch for those videos. Not sure who the authors will be yet. We've got like a long list of about 60 options and growing, so we'll figure out who we actually end up interviewing, but there'll be a collection of those books on atlanticbooks.ca as well if you want to peruse the whole collection. And it's amazing, the diversity again of our authors and stories. So thank you, APMA, for asking me to do this. It's been a really fun conversation, and check it out.
Thank you. And I'm going to put in that issue is going to be the Her Story features as well.
How could I not mention that?
That's right?
Yes.
Okay. Like it didn't change. Yeah. So basically, it's going to be an amazing issue. Where 3 places people can find the magazine?
Well, you can find it in various newspapers across the region. That's a big part of how we distribute it. You can find it at your local library and your local bookstore.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris Benjamin. That's a wrap. Thanks.
Thanks.